Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to another DMU live stream here from the school and college team. My name is Ben, I'm joined this morning by Faye, Henrik and Nikila, and today we are going to be talking about how to apply to university. So if you are in a position where you are maybe either thinking about university but you've not yet applied, maybe you're in the sort of early stages of creating your application, maybe you're sort of tackling that personal statement, or maybe you're sort of towards the end and you're ready to submit. We're going to cover everything from start to finish to do with the UCAS application, hopefully to kind of clue you up on all of the different areas of it. If you have any questions during this live stream, we are going to be taking any questions, so you can pop those into the comments and we'll try and tackle those as we go. There's a lot that we've got to cover today, so let's kick it off with our first section where we talk about exactly what UCAS is. So if you are really at the very, very early stages of applying to university and you've got no idea what UCAS is, this is going to be a great point to start with. And I'm going to hand over to Faye to explain exactly what is UCAS.
Yeah, UCAS, it's the place where you submit your application. So if you're thinking of going to university, you don't usually submit your application straight to the university, particularly if you're a UK student. So UCAS, what does it stand for? Good question for a Monday morning. Universities and College Admission Service. So I should know that off the top of my head, really. So it's a central hub for all undergraduate applications, and there's lots of resources. If you go on to ucas.com, lots of resources on there for students, for parents of students even. And it's a good place to kind of start if you are kind of thinking of applying to university for 2022, or you're still kind of considering applying to university for starting this year in September. You can actually find all the universities in the UK on that website. You can find all the courses. There's about 50,000 courses to choose from. So yeah, if you are still kind of undecided, then UCAS, it's a fabulous place to start on their website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, if you are at those early stages, UCAS is absolutely brilliant. And I guess it's a good place to do kind of research and stuff, isn't it? As you say, all the courses are listed on there. You can do a little search on there. You can type in whatever you like, and hopefully it will come back with a course that you may or may not be interested in. So if you have got absolutely no idea what you want to do and you're not even sure where to start, UCAS is absolutely brilliant. And we've just popped a quick comment in the chat as well. So if you do want to head over to the UCAS website for a little bit more information, that again, like I say, is a good place to start. But obviously do try and stay on this live stream for the duration, because we've got lots and lots more information to cover with you. Next up, we're going to go over some very key deadlines, and we're going to cover the all-important stages of the application. Obviously, we're kind of getting partway through the application cycle at this stage, as we've already seen the application cycle open for a little bit, but this is just a real quick sort of demonstration or timeline for you, so that you've got a bit more clued up in terms of what you need to be aware of over the next few months. So obviously we're talking with the application cycle for anybody applying for next September would have started in the previous September, so September 2020. That's when that cycle opened properly. For those of you that were looking to apply for sort of the slightly more competitive courses, a lot of those do have very, very early deadlines to start in the coming September. So you may have kind of missed the boat a little bit for some of those other courses, particularly if you're looking to apply for somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge. You might find that they are slightly more tricky to get into at this stage because they've got that earlier deadline of October. But typically, and actually the date on here is now incorrect, because typically the UCAS deadline is January 15th, but that has now been pushed back to the end of this week, this coming Friday at 6 p.m. So we've extended, I say we, UCAS have extended the deadline until the end of this week. So if you are still looking to apply, do not fret, because the deadline is still coming up. So you've still got a little bit more time. So once you've applied, so if you apply by the end of January, you should start getting your offers back by March. All universities should get their offers back to you by March, and then you've got until May to make those final decisions on your application. So if you actually do, make sure you've submitted it before the January deadline, and universities do still take applications after January, but we'll try and touch on that a little bit later. Once you've heard back from your offers, you'll then be able to make your final decision ahead of sort of around May time. The date differs slightly every single year. And then obviously you'll know with a bit more confirmation as to whether you've secured your place at university come August, once you get your results, if you haven't already. And then, of course, looking to start university in September. So we're really forward thinking in terms of those deadlines. But as I just said, that January 15th deadline has now been extended. And we've just, again, popped that in the comments. The deadline is now this coming Friday, the 29th. So you've got a little bit more time to get those applications in if you are, like I say, at this very late stage thinking of applying. So we're talking about applying and we're talking about the application process. So let's talk a little bit more about UCAS and actually talk about what the application process entails. And I'm going to hand over to Henrik, who's going to talk us through that.
Cool, thank you, Ben. Yeah, so the actual application process itself is fairly straightforward, and all of it will go through like an online portal. So to start with, you'll create a UCAS account, and you can do this on www.ucas.com/apply. I'm sure our lovely colleague Dow behind the scenes can just pop that on the screen, just so you've got reference for that if you need it. And then what you do is that will be your focal point for the whole of your application pretty much. So you'll create a username and a password. Obviously, keep your password safe. If you are applying with your school or your college, you'll be given a buzzword, and that's just so that it will link your application to your school or college. So if you do need to know that, obviously speak to your tutor or your careers advisor or someone along those lines, and they'll be able to get that for you. The actual application itself, you get up to 5 choices. So you can apply to up to 5 different unis or 5 different courses. You can apply for 5 courses at the same uni, whatever you want to do. It's totally your prerogative. But it is just worth mentioning, and something that's really important. The same application is sent to all universities. So you don't write 5 different applications. You don't write 5 different personal statements. You write one application, you make one application, and you send that off to all your 5 choices. It does stay completely anonymous. So the other unis don't, figure out where else you've applied to. There is a small fee. So it's £20 for a single choice. If you want to apply to one uni or to one course, it's £20. It's £25 if you want to use that 5 applications. So we do typically advise you to spend that extra £5 and make 5 choices, just because it's going to give you a little bit more choice, a little bit more freedom with where you want to go, and it's going to give you a little bit more of a safety net potentially. If you're only applying for one course and things maybe don't quite go to plan, then you've not got any other courses to fall back on. So if you do use your 5 choices, it does give you a little bit more, obviously, freedom with your choice. And then the application process itself, so the actual UCAS application does entail 6 sections. The first one is just pretty admin based, so it'll just be your personal details. So you just need things like your name, your address, ethnic origin, nationality, that kind of stuff, but they aren't all compulsory. You then will have to pop in your university choices. So hopefully you've done loads of research and you figured out what university you want to go to and what course you want to go to. You pop that down there. They don't have to be in preference order. And as I said before, they do stay completely anonymous. You'll then pop in your academic qualifications or your predicted grades. So obviously, if you are applying as a mature student, you already have your grades, so you can pop them in there. But if not, it will be your predicted grades or your teacher assessed grades if you're applying this year. And then any paid employment history. It's not essential, but obviously if you've got any of that, you can put that in there to help your application. And you will need a reference. Typically, this would be your tutor if you are still in school or college. If not, you can use an employer. So if you're a mature student and maybe haven't been to school or college for a few years, you can use a professional reference from your employer. And then the last piece, arguably the most important part, is the dreaded personal statement, and that sort of wraps up your application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll come on to personal statement in just a second. And as I say, hopefully, if people are sort of watching and have any questions about the application process or personal statement, as I say, they can stick those in the comments, because we'll try and tackle those as we go through this live stream. But just really quickly, because we've already talked a little bit about research, and for those students that maybe are struggling to narrow it down to their 5 choices, obviously, Henry, you talked about there making full advantage of UCAS and putting as many choices on there, really open your options up. So how did you, Henry, sort of narrow it down to 5 choices when you were kind of researching university?
You're testing me now. It was a long way ago. It was like 10 years ago, I think. Thinking back, you know what? I think I was in a little bit of a naughty camp where me and my friends just sort of, to start with at first, we started like looking at all going to the same uni. Mm-hmm. And then obviously realised that's probably not the best thing to do. And then we started thinking of where we wanted to go that was obviously different and stuff like that. I used obviously the UCAS websites and then looked at the different the different university websites. I think back in 10 years ago, actually getting a physical prospectus was a thing where you actually get the book and you flick through it and have a look. But for me, it was just I wanted just to find a uni that did a course that I looked like I enjoyed, and then I applied through that really. So I picked the course rather than the uni.
Okay, that's interesting. Faye, what about yourself? Again, I know it was a few years ago for yourself as well, but
it was like yesterday. What are you talking about? I think I started kind of looking around at which universities offered my course, but then I also knew I didn't want to stay local, whereas some people do want to stay local. So I guess you can kind of weigh up what your options are, and then you can look at what your predicted grades or what kind of where you think you are when it comes to your kind of what you might get in your A levels or BTECs or whatever you're doing. And then I just kind of, gosh, I know it was really hard because there's so many universities out there. There's over 100, so it's whittling those choices down. I think I was massively influenced by the fact that my sister was at university before me, and I saw all the all her great pictures and all the things that she was getting involved in. So then I followed her to the same university, which she wasn't too impressed about. So I think it's just kind of thinking, okay, where do you want to be? Do you want to live at home? Do you want to move away? Where does the course that you're offered? It's just, everybody's priorities are a little bit different, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, I mean, like you just mentioned there's other things that you can get involved in. It's not always going to be about the course necessarily. You might just kind of pick not something quite generic, but you might not necessarily go down a very specific route, which I know is what Nikila did. So same sort of question to you, Nikila. I mean, how did you settle on what you ultimately decided to study, and where did that kind of lead you?
I think what Ben means is that my course, so I did a degree in optics. It was very limited in terms of university choices. So instead of there being hundreds, I think it was like, I want to say less than 20 that I had to apply to. So it did make it easier in that regard, in that I didn't have so many different courses to choose from. And with my particular course, there's a set curriculum, there's set points that you have to cover. So the courses themselves are very similar in terms of the content. For instance, the module content has to be, you have to cover X, Y, and Z in order to qualify and then become an optician at the end of that. So it was good in that regards. But the one thing that I did definitely look at was how the teaching was delivered, which was really important to me. So some universities would give you clinics straight away, you got to interact with patients straight away, and you got that practical knowledge, which you could then gain your theory knowledge and then apply that straight away. And that was really what was important to me, because I knew from my learning style, as much as I don't mind exams, I knew for the career that I was going into, it was really important that I had those interpersonal skills, that I was able to interact well with patients, and that I really not only understood the theory but was able to apply that. So that was what I went down. So I went to my choices were universities that had clinics on campus, so then we could interact with patients literally from the first year, whereas other universities have the approach of not introducing you to real life patients until your third year. And to me, I thought that would stunt my learning, so I went down that pathway. So it is really important, as Faye and Henrika said, obviously everyone's priorities are different, and it does really vary depending on the courses that you're studying. What your priorities might be might vary completely to your friends. So you really need to look at what's right for you, and just perhaps make like sort of like a tick box exercise. Okay, what are my 3 non-negotiables? Does it have to be somewhere that has good transport links? Do I want really nice accommodation? Does it need to be an hour commute from my house? Or do you know what I mean? These are the types of things you need to look at, and then just kind of see which universities can offer you those things, and then make your decisions based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to say, we could be here pretty much all day, and in fact we have done live streams where we've talked solely about obviously research and university and the sort of things to look out for. So we've got other things to cover today, but definitely I think that's a good example there, just to kind of give yourself a few tick boxes, decide what's most important to you, look at the sort of things that you can get involved in. It might be things that your sister has been doing at university, like Faye, or it might be Henrik was looking more specifically at the course, but again, I know Henrik, you were part of sports team, so that might be a big part of the research process. So there's things to consider, definitely, and that's where, as Henrik talked about a few minutes ago about the UCAS, your decisions on your 5 choices on your UCAS application, narrowing it down to that 5, it might be a really easy task, but it might also be a really difficult task if you're not sure which university you want to apply to. So that's why I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. I'm going to hand back over to Nikila now, because we're going to talk a little bit about the big part, the scary part of the UCAS application, the bit that quite a lot of students do tend to get that little bit stuck with, and that is the personal statement. So Nikila, could you give us a bit of an overview as to what students can expect from a personal statement?
Yeah, of course. So, as Henrik's already said, you can only write the one personal statement, and this personal statement is sent to all 5 of your university choices. So, we do recommend making sure that you don't reference any particular university in your applications, because obviously you do run the risk of alienating your other 4 choices. So, even though you might have one which is your dream university and you're convinced that that's where you want to go, it doesn't look very professional, and it doesn't look good to the other universities to box yourself in straight away and reference that one university. So, do avoid that. Just remember that this is really your opportunity to sell yourself to universities. This might be for the majority of courses where you don't have an interview in person or even virtually at the moment. This might be the only interaction that they have with you that is personal. So most students, obviously, that are applying to the same courses, you perhaps have the same sort of grades, that perhaps studied similar sort of courses, but the personal statement is really your opportunity to sell yourself and set yourself aside from these other applicants. So it is a really important piece. The universities mainly want to know from your personal statement why you've chosen a particular course and why you think you'd be suitable. So is it that you have certain work experiences or volunteering experiences that you think would be really applicable to the course that you've applied for? Or is it that you're really passionate? These are all the things that you need to get across, but just make sure that you are being authentic to yourself and just making it relevant to yourself, because it shouldn't be that your personal statement looks exactly identical to your friend's personal statement and that you've just applied for different courses. It really needs to be that you've got that personal touch there, so they can get a bit of a flavour for who you are as a person, because that's really what they're looking for. There is a limitation for how long it can be, so it's not reams and reams of pages of you going on and on and on, because obviously they do have thousands and thousands of applications to look at. So it's limited to 4,000 characters, which is 47 lines, and it works out to just under about a page and a half to a page, depending on obviously how you've written it. So do bear that in mind when you're writing it as well. In terms of how to get started with a personal statement and how to structure your statement, my top tip, and I will say it before and I have said it again and I will continuously say it, is to start with a mind map, because often the most difficult part of your personal statement is to just put that pen to paper and get going, and it can be quite a daunting experience, particularly if you've not written a cover letter or anything like that before. It's the first type of time you've had this kind of experience before, so just get started in some way. The best way to start, our advice would always to be to have a really engaging opening paragraph. Your first outlook of a personal statement, the first time you read a personal statement, if that first paragraph isn't very engaging, if it's quite dry and almost like a repetitive personal statement starter that perhaps everybody else would have, it doesn't really get you off to a good start. So just make sure you keep your opening statement nice and engaging. Explain your choice of the course. So why have you chosen that particular course? Why do you think you'd be suitable for the course? And these will be the main context of your personal statement. So the main body of the personal statement will be this type of thing. You need to also discuss any extracurricular activities that you have participated in. That could be work experience. Have you studied the EPQ? Were you a school prefect? Do you have any hobbies? Anything at all that you think would make you a better candidate should be mentioned in here as well. And then you also want to conclude with something about your aspirations or your future goals, or what you hope to get out of university at the end of it. So just let them know that you've thought this through and that you want to study X course because you want to have Y career at the end of it. That shows that you've had a bit of intention there, and that you've done a bit of research as well. So in terms of how to structure it, we'd say about 2/3 of your personal statement should be about the subject and your suitability. So that will be the main body. And then the final third will be the relevant work experience, voluntary experiences, etc. Anything that you've done that's relevant. I think one of the tricky things is that it does almost feel a bit awkward to be singing your own praises in your personal statement. It doesn't feel very natural to do, but at the end of the day, that is what you're there to do. You are there to sell yourself. So don't be afraid to just sing your praises and highlight all the best things that you have been involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good summary of everything to do with the statement as well, because we, again, and this is another example of another live stream that we have spent, over an hour kind of discussing the personal statement just on its own. So we could be here all day discussing the ins and outs. But yeah, it's quite a hefty thing. It's quite a lot to sort of concentrate on and sit and plan and kind of do in a short space of time. So, give yourself that time to sort of draft it, go over it, think about what you're actually going to submit in terms of how you're going to sell yourself to that university. I think is really important. Faye, do you have any other sort of advice or anything that you want to touch on that Nikila mentioned there, or any words of wisdom for the personal statement? You're always quite good at these.
I think just know that you're not necessarily going to get it perfect on the first attempt. It might take a couple of goes to do. Obviously, put some time aside if you can to give it some real thought and ask for feedback. You know, if you are at college or sixth form, or if you're applying independently, do ask your family for some feedback. Get some help. Get them to read it through. I think it can be really helpful to get somebody else even to read it back to you, because then you can kind of pick up any grammar mistakes that you might have made. I think as well, make you use Microsoft Word. Really, really helpful for picking up any spelling mistakes that you might make. So instead of typing directly into the UCAS form itself, it's a good idea to use Word, or if you've got any free trials on your laptop or PC, like Grammarly, for example, they're really good at picking up how you can word something a bit better. And I think just generally reading it out loud or getting somebody to read it to you is really good, because you can tell whether it flows. You don't necessarily have to follow the strict kind of plan that Nikila mentioned. It's just a good way of helping to ensure that it flows onto the next thought that you have, and you make sure to include everything in it. So just making sure you're making it easy for admissions tutors to read your personal statement, and that it all kind of links up and makes sense. I think keep it relevant as well. Just think about kind of your experiences over the last year, the last 2 years. You know, what kind of accomplishments or what have you learned from your course recently? How is that linking to what you want to study at university? So we kind of want to know quite recently, you know, what you've been getting up to and how that's relevant to the course and being successful at university. And I think something for me as well is just to stick with language you're comfortable with. We don't need you to think that you need to swallow a thesaurus. You know, be confident with the language they're using. You don't have to pick the biggest words. As long as, again, you're checking your grammar, checking it sounds, you know, flows well, then that's what we want to see.
I think that's, again, some really good advice. Generally speaking, you know, everybody likes to stick in the really fancy words. They have got absolutely no idea what they actually mean, but they're sticking them there because it sounds sophisticated. You know, we've read quite a few statements that we've seen, you know, students do things like that, or they've done things where it's maybe not so relevant, or forgetting that it is actually a personal statement and they've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent. So yeah, definitely really, really good advice for the statement there. So thank you very much for that. Henrik, any last points that you want to add with regard to the personal statement before we move on?
Not particularly, really. I think, yeah, as Faye mentioned, just, you know, sort of cut to the chase as much as you can, I think, and don't copy it, I guess, is a big thing. You know, don't want to get plagiarized on. Pretty sure UCAS have got some very fancy software that picks up plagiarisms and stuff like that. So yeah, don't ruin your chance of getting into uni by copying elsewhere, because we understand it can be pretty difficult writing your personal statement. And another thing as well, just as a quick tip, which I like to tell people to do, is don't fixate too much on the opening paragraph, because that can sometimes be the hardest part. You know, putting pen to paper or putting words down. Yeah, so maybe write the introduction after you've actually wrote the main body, because you might find that a little bit easier. You sort of know how to introduce yourself then, because you've sort of, you know, got a flow for what you're saying and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice as well to end on, particularly for those that are struggling to kind of start. It's very difficult to start, generally speaking. So if you can sort of tackle somewhere in the middle where you know you've got some very kind of almost hard facts, you can go, well, I know I did this, I know I've got this skill, and here's my example. You can sort of deal with everything around it a little bit later. So yeah, good advice there. And as I say, we could talk all day about personal statements. We really would be here all day. So we're going to move on really, really quickly. And we're going to head over to what happens after you've actually submitted the application. So when you click the big, scary looking submit button on the UCAS website, what then happens once you've done that? Henrik, I wonder whether you could very quickly just tackle this part.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, so as soon as you hit the send button, UCAS will send over a copy of your application to all the universities that you've applied to. And then probably what will happen within those universities, there will be admissions teams or admissions tutors who will actually receive your application, and they'll be the people that process it and make a decision on that. So they'll read through your predicted grades, any work experience that you might have, your personal statement, of course, and they'll just make sure that it matches up with what they're asking for, as a requirement for their course. And then essentially they'll just make a decision on whether they want to make you an offer. So it'll probably be a conditional offer that obviously you meet the requirements of what's expected of you to get onto that course. But they might also ask you to supply a portfolio. Now that tends to be more of like the creative subjects, and this is normally a lot of like maybe 20 to 30 pieces of work that you've studied throughout your time. They might also ask you to interview. Now obviously that's pretty typical for a lot of, say, NHS-based courses, things like nursing, midwifery. And they might also ask you to audition if you are looking at more of a performance-based course. And then once you've done that, they'll make a decision and they'll update your progress on UCAS Track. So you can always refer back to UCAS Track throughout the entire process, and you'll be able to just have a look at the update, what the university have decided, essentially.
Cool. Yeah, and like I say, it's always very important that you do keep an eye on that UCAS Track to see where what stage your application is in. And obviously if you need to sort of communicate with the university for any reason, if they need additional information from you, you're doing that well ahead of time, just to give yourself again the best possible chance to get to university. So that's why we wanted to highlight that over here. So I know that obviously you've mentioned a little bit around in kind of the making offers side of things. So
yeah.
Hey, I wonder whether you could sort of tackle a little bit more about the offers and the sort of decisions that maybe students have to make at that stage.
Yeah, when you submit your application, you'll start hearing back from universities, and the types of offer, there's a couple of them, and it might be that they give you a conditional offer. So it's, yes, they like your application, they think that you would be a strong candidate, and they're happy to give you a place on the course, but only if you meet perhaps the grade boundaries that they set. Or it might be, also you have to do something in additional. So a criminal record check, for example, or a health check. So it depends on the course that you're doing, whether that would apply. If you have perhaps finished a sixth form or college in a previous year, you're not currently studying, it might be that they offer you an unconditional offer because you've already met the grades. They might also offer you an alternative course offer. So if you perhaps didn't quite demonstrate that you were a suitable candidate for the course, or perhaps it was just that it was really competitive, and there was lots of applications for the number of places available, and other people perhaps just had more experience to pop on their personal statement for the course. It might be that they say, okay, actually, we think that you'd be a better fit for X course, for example. So if that happens to you, obviously think it over, don't rush into anything. And the other thing that might happen is you might be unsuccessful in securing an offer from a university. So that's really why you get 5 choices anyway. So that's why you can apply to different universities, just in case perhaps one is unsuccessful and you've got 4 others to choose from. Once you hear back from all your universities, and it might be different times that you hear back from universities, they might not all get back to you straight away. You can call a university if you want to see, am I going to get an offer soon? Can you give me an update? But do give us a little bit of time. Generally, we have until around about March time to get back to you with what offers we want to send your way. And once you hear back from all your universities, you then need to make a firm and insurance choice. So your firm is the university that you want to go to, you can see yourself there. And then you've got your insurance, which is hopefully the university that you'll still be happy to go to if you don't get into your firm. And what happens with any other offers that you receive is they actually just disappear, you decline them. It's like they never existed. So you've got your firm, you've got your insurance going into results day in August or July, depending whenever it is going to be this year.
Mm-hmm.
And you should have until about May to make those choices, that firm insurance choice. So just watch the space, check the UCAS website as to when you actually need to make those decisions.
Yeah, obviously everything is a little bit touch and go at the minute for one reason or another. So obviously dates have changed, as we said, about obviously the UCAS deadline being the end of this month rather than the 15th, which it normally is. So I know there's been talk about other dates changing as well. So obviously if you are submitting your application, just do keep an eye on what you need to do, keep an eye on any emails, keep an eye on UCAS Track so that you are fully up to date and that you don't miss any of your chances to get to where you want to go. So speaking of which, once you've done all of your 5 choices, it's not kind of the end of the road. If you are in a position where perhaps situation changes, perhaps you don't quite get the offers that you need, there are other opportunities potentially to speak to universities and get an additional offer. Nicola, I wonder whether you could talk to us a little bit about UCAS Extra.
Yeah, of course. So I will be honest, when I was applying to university, I didn't know what UCAS Extra was. I'd never heard of it. I didn't really understand it. So it is quite a lifeline. So it's something that you should know about. So UCAS Extra is for applicants who have either been unsuccessful in all 5 choices. So they've applied for 5 universities, 5 different courses, or 5 of the same course, however you've done it, and they have been unsuccessful, unfortunately, in all 5 choices. Or it is for a candidate who has applied with all 5 choices, but has perhaps changed their mind, whether that's on the course or university, and they think, oh gosh, I wish I'd applied for this course instead. This is your lifeline, and UCAS Extra is what you can use to get around this. Now, UCAS will allow you to add 1 extra choice through UCAS, and that opens at the end of February and is open up until July. And I can't stress this enough, can only use this if you've used all 5 of your choices, and you cannot be holding any offers. So if, for instance, this applies to you and you do change your mind, or you do think perhaps I want to explore other options, what we would recommend that you do is to contact the universities that you're looking to apply for. So say, for instance, you change your mind and you realise you want to come to DMU, but you haven't applied to us already. At this point, if you're not holding any offers, you are able to contact the university and speak with them and just say, this is the course I'm interested in. These are the criteria that I'm likely to meet. Do I meet the entry criteria for your course? And then the university will get back to you with a yes or no. And if it is a yes, you can add the university as your extra choice. Now, I can't stress this enough. You shouldn't really decline all of your choices and then just add us as an extra choice without speaking to the university first, because worst case scenario, you've withdrawn all 5 choices, you've got no offers, you get in touch with the university, they unfortunately say no, and then you're left with nothing. And that's definitely the worst case scenario and something we would not recommend you get yourself into. So just do your research, speak to the university that you're interested in, and see if they have anything that they can offer you before you make any changes on UCAS. So in theory, you could be holding an offer on UCAS, but you would need to reject that offer in order to add a university as your clearing choice. So do just bear that in mind, and just make sure you're making the right decision for yourself, and do think it through. Don't rush into it, because you do have quite a few months to make the additional extra UCAS choice. Yeah, so you can't change your personal statement, which is something you do need to be aware of. So it would be your original personal statement that would stand. However, some universities, if you contact them and speak to their admissions team, they may accept a new personal statement from you if you completely change the course from, for instance, maths to history. You might be able to get in touch with the university and say, is it okay if I drop your personal statement? But do ask them before you go writing one, because it'd be such a waste of your efforts to go ahead and write this great personal statement, which they may not accept, and you do obviously have your studies to focus on as well. The other thing is that it won't cost you any additional to do this. So if you have paid the £25, which is the amount that you pay for 5 choices on UCAS, you won't need to pay anything else. This is within that cost. But yeah, and also we do recommend that you find out from the universities why you were unsuccessful. For instance, if you've received 5 unsuccessful responses from the universities and you want to know why it is you've been unsuccessful, do speak to the universities and say, is there anything that I can work on? Because if it's something like you don't meet the entry criteria at all, it might be that you don't hold the correct GCSEs or A levels, etc., then it would be quite futile to then apply for the same course elsewhere when you're likely to get the same response back. So you want to make sure you're using that extra choice as sensibly as possible.
Yeah. Brilliant. And that's just a quick run through for UCAS Extra for those of you that are applying now, but you fall into any of those categories that Nicola mentioned. Obviously, just give you that extra option to use if you are in that situation. It's worth knowing as well, I know I touched on this before, if you do miss the deadline of the 29th, which is the end of this week, you can still apply through UCAS. You can still apply late to universities. That is not a problem. The nice thing is with that, obviously, a lot of universities will still have spaces. They will still take your application. I think UCAS call it, is it something to do with like fair assessment application deadline, where
Yeah.
Equal consideration, whatever it's
That's the one, thank you. So just because this deadline is in place, it is more of a soft deadline for equal consideration, as the guys just said there. I couldn't remember the word for a minute. So if you do apply a little bit later, if you want to spend a bit more time with that personal statement, you can still use that extra time. Up until we get a little bit closer to results day, where something called clearing opens up. And Henrik, you're going to lead the charge with this last little point around results day and clearing before we wrap up.
Yeah, so clearing this year is, sorry, I was due to check the date. It is on the August the 24th. So yeah, big day. Obviously, pencil it in if you are expecting to get your results then. Your UCAS track will update from around 8 a.m. on the 24th. Just obviously bear in mind that UCAS does tend to crash sometimes in the morning because there's so much traffic trying to access your results at the same time. But it does go live from that time, so you can check your grades on there and check your outcome. And be prepared for an early start. Now, normally we would tell or advise students to go and collect their results from their school or college. Now, obviously, because of COVID and the current situation, not quite exactly sure how it will work. You'll probably have a like a login or a portal that you can log into from your school, so you can actually get your results, and then those results will probably be posted to you. But obviously, this is subject to change, so just sort of watch that space. What we do try and suggest as well is avoid going on holiday. Now, if you can go on holiday this year, try and avoid going around results day, just in case, you do have to be available to make any changes. Maybe if things don't quite go to plan, or clearing, which I'll touch on in a minute. You just want to make sure that you are in the best position you can just to figure everything out, ready for when you start university. So in the morning, you can call through to your university of choice and just check if you've got into that university. So that's called confirmation. And essentially what that just means is that you're ringing through to that uni, you're just asking them if you're in or out, and they'll be able to let you know if you've met the requirements, and they'll say yes, you've got a place. But that's as far as that conversation can pretty much go. So you will have to actually check your grades yourself, or you'll have to collect them. There is also something called adjustment. Now, it's not too popular, but if you do exceed your firm offer, you can look for another place without losing the place that you already have. So similar to clearing, but you're just sort of leveling up your offer, if you want to look at it that way. So you'll go to potentially a university or a course that has slightly higher entry requirements. Obviously, this is if you exceed your predicted grades. And if not, then you do have clearing. Now, clearing, first thing I just want to mention as well is sometimes clearing gets a little bit of a negative sort of connotation associated with it, but thousands of students go through clearing every year, and it's a really, really good opportunity for students to get a place onto a course that still has places available. Now, clearing typically is for students that haven't maybe got into their firm or their insurance choice, or if they haven't made an application. Also, students might have changed their mind about where they want to study or the course they've applied to. So there's so many different scenarios where a student might find themselves applying to a university through clearing. So what you need to apply to clearing is essentially just your UCAS ID, and you just need to check the university websites that you might be interested in to see if they've still got courses available to apply to. Most universities will go into clearing, but certain universities might only go on there for a couple of hours or a couple of days. The occasional uni might not go into clearing at all. So it's just something you need to have a look at come results day. And essentially what you'll be doing is you'll be sort of asking around for as many verbal offers as you can. So you can speak to every single university out there if you really wanted to, and you can get a verbal offer. And once you've got your verbal offer that you want from the course that you're interested in, the university that you want to study at, you just have to add this to your UCAS track, and that confirms your offer, and then that will be the university you're going to. So essentially, you get 24 hours typically to just consider your verbal offers, and once you've got the offer that you want, just remember to add it to your UCAS track, and then you're good to go.
Oh, we lost Henrik slightly there, didn't we?
He's still going.
Yeah. I don't know if his microphone might have cut out.
I think it might have done.
I also don't think he can hear us.
I don't think he can hear us either.
This is very strange. We've not had this one before.
We've never had this before. It's still going.
It is. Okay. Henrik? Oh dear. Okay. Sorry, Henrik.
He's still going backstage.
He is. I wonder whether his screen's crashed or something and he's just not.
I must have.
Will somebody just pop a thing in the private chat to say, Henrik, we've not cut you off completely, but we lost you for a minute there and we had a very strange audio bug. So I don't know if Henrik can hear us, but I think just covering on the last little point that he was saying there is obviously checking into clearing. It's a very useful, obviously it's a very useful platform to obviously get those extra offers. You can contact obviously the universities directly, as Henrik was saying. I don't know whether we can bring him back in. Hello?
What happened?
You went robotic.
Yeah, you sort of lost your we lost your audio, but I don't think you could hear us either.
Oh, he's gone now.
Oh, he's gone again. Very strange.
Where did we get to?
I don't know. I've lost track of where we got to with that. But yeah, so clearing's another brilliant platform to utilize. It's absolutely fantastic, obviously, for those students that, again, as Henrik was saying, obviously choose not to go through the recruitment cycle at this stage and decide not to apply through this stage, or maybe even actually decide later down the line they change their mind and you actually want to call universities that way. So definitely, as you get closer to results day, think about clearing, utilize clearing as a potential route. If you are in either of those situations, or perhaps like I say, you change your mind, you don't apply, or as Henrik was saying, you don't get the grades you need to get onto the course that you want to apply for, and you have a look to see if there's any other universities that are offering spaces for similar courses or the course you're interested in, because very often what they'll do is they might sort of drop the grade a tariff or so, just to give you a little bit more of a fighting chance to get onto those courses around results day. Again, we're not sure how that's going to look this year. Clearing did make a bit of a change last year, what with the sort of teacher predicted grades, etc. So obviously watch this space as we get a bit closer to sort of results day this year. Obviously we've got a few months hopefully to iron out any issues moving forward, but that really is kind of it from us. Hopefully you found this useful in terms of looking at the UCAS cycle from start to finish. If there's any sort of questions or any queries or anything you want to know a little bit more about, what we'll do is we've popped our sort of inquiries details into the comments as well. So if you want to either speak to us over the phone or via email, there is some contact details on screen and in the comments. So anything at all about UCAS, about applications, about the university itself, just pop them a line. Details are in the comments and we'll be able to obviously hopefully guide you a little bit from there. We are running other live streams, so you can catch other live streams here. We're going to do a student finance one, I believe, tomorrow. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, tune back into dmu.ac.uk/live streams and we'll cover our student finance tomorrow. So if you are applying to start in September, student finance is going to be the next big thing that you're going to need to worry about once you've submitted your application. So it might be worth just jumping in and tuning in for that as well. But other than that, obviously, if you're in the UK, you hopefully you can spend a bit more time in the snow. You can go out and enjoy yourself a little bit. But obviously, everyone else, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you at the next live stream. Take care.